Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and this is going to be a Raid Shadow Legends video about one of the best and most utility champions in the game in Krisk the Ageless. Now, this is the time to put this guide out because we just had a 10x event for Krisk that a lot of people were pulling void shards for, so hopefully some people were able to acquire him during that event. And really, a champion discussion around Krisk is going to be mostly timeless because his kit is so good that he's not going anywhere. He's been one of the best champions in the game since he was introduced to the game, and he's so amazing from early game to mid game to end game, even in places like the Hydra and stuff like that. So it's really important to get an infographic out there. We'll talk about his kit, why it's so good, where the best places are to utilize him, and also how to build him effectively based on the content that you are going to be clearing with him. So let's get into it. Alrighty, now as always for the champion guides here on the channel, down below I will have a link to an infographic that kind of lays out all of the basic information about the champion. That'll be linked down below in the video description and the pinned comment if you would like to pull up the general overlay of Krisk the Ageless. But okay, let's have a talk about Krisk in general here and what makes him so ridiculous. Now, he actually was not in the game when it launched. A lot of people think he is a legacy champion that was a launch champion, but he was introduced a little bit after Raid Shadow Legends came out, and since that moment, he has been one of the most sought after champions unanimously by the whole player base. Which I guess makes perfect sense given that his name is the Ageless, because he has been ageless in Raid for sure. So he does scale with defense, which is going to make him very tanky, and his A1 is going to be an AoE big version of the decreased speed, and it is very reliable. It books up to a 50% chance. AoE, permanent decreased speed on the default ability, obviously amazing in basically any content that you're doing. Then you get an A2 that is going to be another AoE and place a 50% ally protect on your whole team, plus also 2 continuous heal buffs on this champion because he's going to be tanking more damage. That helps synergize with it and help him self-sustain. And then on top of that, we're going to increase the duration of all buffs on your whole team by 1 turn. So, ally protection, just an amazing ability in so many different content from Demon Lord teams, Hydra, Arena, and then you're also going to increase the duration of all buffs, and it's a 3-turn cooldown, giving him a good rotation. Then on top of all of that, he also gets some AoE CC on a booked up 3-turn cooldown. Remember, we love champions that have a rotation of default and then 3-turn, because that gives us a nice clean rotation and consistent performance. So we're also going to add in some AoE CC with the provoke, and we're going to increase defense on the champion for 2 turns, which helps synergize because of his ally protection. And we're going to place increased speed on the whole team except for him for 2 turns. Now, if this was the whole team, including him, Krisk would be even more ridiculous. But it is nice to get the increased speed on the other allies here as kind of a bonus. And Krisk would already be amazing even without a passive, but he also gets this passive here, where at the start of each round, he's going to place a shield buff on all allies, equal to 50% of this champion's max HP, and also going to be booked up to a 100% chance of placing a decreased defense debuff and a decreased attack debuff on the attacker when hit. So when you're trying to progress through the game, obviously this is amazing. Shield is awesome. You just get like a bonus shield set on Krisk. It's not even just that, it's a buffed up version of the shield set on Krisk for free without even having to wear one. And on top of that, he can act as the defense break when you're dungeon grinding. And he can also make the bosses and all of that hit you a little bit less hard because of the decreased attack coming along with it. So what an amazing and consistent, especially progression type passive. Then for the base stats, there really isn't a whole lot to take note of. Everything's pretty normal and par for the course. He does get a base resistance of 50, which is really nice. And his base accuracy of 10 is nice. It's always nice when it's not 0, because Krisk does need to be built with accuracy. He's got a lot of utility in his kit, obviously with the A1, a decreasing speed, and then the CC that he places on the A3, while also doing defense and attack break on his passive. So now let's head on over to building Krisk, where we'll talk about the booking process, the sets to consider, and the masteries to chase after when you are putting Krisk together for a build on your account. Okay, now for my Krisk, you can see I've kind of built him in a general utility, just with your normal suspects you would expect on a champion that needs speed, accuracy, and tankiness. So I've got the perception, immortal, and speed as just kind of a general build. Now Krisk is so useful that there is all sorts of ways you can build him. You can build him prioritizing the arena. You can build him prioritizing 3v3 arena. You can use him prioritizing the Hydra. I've seen some people put him in like a relentless set just to try and really cycle through to keep the speed and the provoke on the head of decay and all sorts of stuff. So with Krisk being so generally useful, it's hard to give you like one cookie cutter way to use him. It's just going to depend on you and your account. So there is multiple ways that you can get insane value out of Krisk. And he can be a little bit difficult to build because he does take so many stats. I mean, really anything except for the damage dealing stuff like attack and crit rate and crit damage. Really anything else besides that he's going to want. I mean, he scales with defense. He gets the shield based on HP. So obviously he wants all of the tankiness as a utility support with the defense and HP. He also needs tons of accuracy, especially if you're going to be using him in places like the Iron Twins and in 3v3 arena or something. And he also needs a decent amount of speed to make sure that he is cycling through enough to keep the provoke up on the head of decay in like a Hydra scenario and stuff like that. But in relation to his speed, you do want to make sure that you remember to tune him right within your team so that you're getting value out of the increased duration of all buffs on all allies. If you build him the similar to like an Arbiter or a Wassandra or something, and you have him go first or whatever, you can run the risk of not getting the as much value out of the increased buff duration on kind of that first turn that he takes. But we'll talk about that here in a little bit when I show him in action and we dive into kind of showing some arena fights with him and stuff like that. So as far as the individual pieces, the banner, you're almost always going to want accuracy. He needs accuracy in his kit because there's so much utility in it. So we definitely want to stack that as high as possible, especially if you're using him in PvP. Besides that, it'd be great to get the normal tankiness stats and the speed and that type of stuff. For the amulet, you know, his shield is based on HP, which is nice, but you honestly just want to get like your double or triple roll accuracy amulet as long as his defense or HP should be fine. And then similarly on the ring, ideally you would prioritize maybe a little bit skewing towards HP, but he does have a way better base defense than a base HP. So the gear with defense percentages will scale pretty well on him. For the boots, it can make sense to go with tanky percent stat boots on him. And especially if you get ones like this, look at this. I got ones with speed. Let's go ahead and let's ascend that to level 2 live on the video. We actually got some 6-star speed boots that hit speed as a substat. I think that's the only time it's ever happened on my account. So there we go. Cheers. We got an amazing boot here for Krisk. Then for the chest and gloves, obviously HP percent is fine, but if you have a defense percent gear here with amazing substats or something, it's not bad to consider one of those as well. And we got one we can ascend here as well. This chest here. Oh my goodness, we got defense percent. So another one we're taking to 2 immediately. Wow, we're getting good rolls on our Krisk here. The top ones are going to be pretty simple. You're looking for the speed, accuracy, and tanky type stats. And if you want to see the total stats on my Krisk, I can pull it up for a second over there. The 92k HP, the 3800 defense, 219 speed. Remember, the crit rate, crit damage doesn't really matter a whole ton. And then 450 accuracy, which is what I need to use him in the Hydra, along with the 300 resistance, just kind of trying to get that where we can. He does have the base of 50 resistance, which is pretty nice. Now, as far as the skills and the booking process for Krisk, as we see on the infographic over there on the far middle right, he does take 14 books, which is high for a legendary champion, but Krisk is obviously worth it, and the books are pretty impactful because you're taking your A1 from 30% to 50%, which is huge on something like decreased speed AoE, and then you're also getting cooldown on your A2 and 2 cooldowns on your A3 with a way more reliable placing of the defense break and attack break on your passive. So given that Krisk is just so generally useful, he's worth the books. As you acquire them, you can't go wrong spending those books on Krisk. He's worth the 14 price, even though it is high. And then for the masteries here on the full page, I can remove myself from the camera. If you want a screenshot or anything like that, I'll pop myself down here during the masteries section. But yeah, you know, Eagle Eye is a pretty popular choice, especially if you're going to use him in PvP. That's a great tier 6 mastery. And then this should be a decently general setup for him. Now, if you're only going to be using him in PvE and you have plenty of accuracy for the content you're clearing, I guess you could consider going for War Master or something to help him crank out a little bit more damage. In the Hydra, I could see that making sense. So then when we are going to be taking Krisk into battle, he is going to struggle the most against teams that have really reliable buff strip. Obviously, he not only increases the duration of all buffs, which isn't going to happen if your team doesn't have a lot of buffs on them, but he's also going to do a lot of cool things like place that shield at the start of the fight and place increased speed on his allies and stuff like that. So you want to be careful when you're going up against maybe a team like this where you've got a Madame Ceres. Madame Ceres not only is going to strip away all buffs, but she's also going to place a defense break on your whole team. So be careful of the nuke teams like this. If you let them go first, strip everything away, now all of a sudden his shield means nothing and you get blasted down before you kind of get value out of Krisk. So you want to fight a little bit more of a defensive style and go against teams that aren't going to have super reliable buff strip. So Krisk could potentially do decently well against this team, even though it is tough. Let's go ahead and fire it up and kind of see what happens here. So right there was Krisk placing the shield that he gets from his passive that you see on my entire team, making me a lot tankier. And then when it becomes his turn after Ramantu here, so with me playing around with him, he will kind of change his decision based on what's going on in the battlefield. Sometimes he'll do his A3 on auto, and sometimes he'll do his A2. This is why I said to make sure and prioritize making sure he is speed tuned properly to get some value out of increased buff duration. Because right now, based on what's going on here with all the buffs and stuff, I bet when I hit auto, he's going to do his A2, which is going to be that AoE ally protection and the continuous heal on himself, while also increasing the duration of all ally buffs. Which, look at how many buffs I have on the battlefield. We've got like 17 or 18 buffs or whatever, and when I hit auto, I'm gonna put it on his A1 to prove. So I'm gonna hit auto in 3, 2, 1, and there we did the A2 and increased the buff duration, which you can see brings insane amount of value. And because we went up against a team that did not have reliable and consistent buff strip, we are able to kind of snowball them over the course of time. They're going to get the revive from the Duchess, but we are going to eventually outlast them because we've just got a way bigger buff snowball than they do. There goes Krisk again, increasing the duration. We can basically keep everything up permanently, and they're never going to be able to control the battlefield. So Krisk is just going to kind of slowly snowball more and more. And as long as we can get the Duchess down eventually here from the Ramantu, who I've got built in kind of a hybrid build to do enough damage, we should be good to go and be able to take down the fight. And there it is. So, yep, that's kind of an example of a fight that you would want to pick with Krisk to make sure that you, as long as you're not going up against that nuke, remove all buffs, nuke style, Krisk can be an insane snowball champion. And as far as PvE content, Krisk is very well known for being insanely good in the Hydra. Not only because of everything we've talked about, the AoE decreased speed on the default, and the ally protection, the heals for himself, the defense break, the attack break, and all of that. He has an insane amount of utility because of the Head of Decay. Now, you'll notice a lot of times on these passives that bosses have in the Doom Tower or in dungeons or the Hydra, that their passives will a lot of time show this kind of like caveat here where they're just immune to CC stuff like Provoke. And this one over here, immune to CC stuff like Provoke. And then this one over here, immune to CC stuff like Provoke. But the Head of Decay that we see over here on the left side, you can see that when it gets to the mark of having the immunities, it's got the immunity to stun, freeze, sleep, and all that, but there is no Provoke. So Krisk is an amazing champion for keeping the Provoke there on the Head of Decay, because you do not want the Head of Decay doing this AoE cleanse on all Hydra heads while increasing their turn meter. If you don't deal with the Head of Decay, that can really just blow up your Hydra run, and everything that you've placed on the Hydras, all the debuffs and stuff like that, gets instantly wiped away, and now you're screwed. So not only is Krisk amazing at dealing with the Head of Decay and helping you keep that provoke up over there to make your runs better, he also brings all the other stuff that I talked about a little bit ago, ally protection and everything to kind of make your team more tanky and help you out, while also starting with a shield while you're kind of trying to get your team up and rolling. As far as dungeons and all that sort of stuff, if you're like a progression kind of account, he can probably be useful anywhere. You know, in the end game, I guess he would probably be best in like the Ice Golem or something, where it can hit insanely hard, and he won't be used maybe places like the Fire Knight and all of that. But he can even be kind of fun in some of your tanky progression spider type teams. And I also use him in my Iron Twins 15 team as well, just to help me be consistent and keep everything alive. And also Krisk can be the speed break and the defense break and all of that, so he is insanely good in the Iron Twins as well. And now let's talk about the fun part, and that is going to be the grades for Krisk. Now, as you can tell, if you made it this far in the video, Krisk is obviously very amazing in basically all types of content, or at least usable and solid there. So he grades up next to Duchess as far as overall utility in a tier list context of grading champions, and some people would argue that he is the best overall in terms of just general usefulness within the raid universe. But he would be unanimously regarded on the top row here of the most generally useful legendaries in the context of an overall tier list. So then for the individual breakdown of the grades, you're going to see a lot of the golden top level grades here above 80. And, you know, in the arena, he used to be probably like a 90 plus, but he has been power crept a little bit. There's been so many really good PvP arena champions that have come out in the last year, year and a half. So Krisk has slid down a little bit, but he's still very good in the arena. And Faction Wars, obviously, gonna be incredible. You know, the tankiness and the ally protection and stuff like that really helps a lot with 3-starring the Wizard faction. I believe they go up against the red boss, which hits insanely hard, so he helps a ton there. And then he's just going to be kind of generally useful in a lot of places. He's probably the best overall Hydra champion in the game. He's so obviously a 100 there, and going to be kind of useful everywhere in the game. Also a 100 for progression. If you summon this guy on a new account, you are going to be thanking your lucky stars, and your raid experience is going to be that much better. Back in the day, you know, funny little raid history 101 segment that we like to do here on the channel. Back in the day, Plarium hosted a content creator competition where you start a new account, and then it's the first content creator to get that account to gold 4. And it was like me and a few of the other content creators, but you know, Plarium gave us each like 50 void shards and like 50 ancient shards and stuff like that for starting the account, and then kind of just run with it and see who the first person to get to gold 4 is. And
all right. So you already got a sweet ass Lego, and now you got 24 here. Double
void shards.
Double voids.
Anything can happen.
Here it is.
Oh,
here it is.
Oh my god.
Wait, Chris. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Wow.
What's happening, guys?
Have you Krisk? Are you?
That's what happens.
These accounts are fixed.
Wow.
They are. They're
guys. When you live your life right and you have good karma, you get good pulls, all right? That's the way it works.
Good karma. Get out.
I can't believe you got Chris.
No way.
All right, keep the time. Boom, gold 4. 2250, 21 UTC, March 31st. The gold 4 rush is over. And I ended up winning that gold rush competition, they called it, because I was lucky enough to get Krisk. I was sitting here pulling shards out of my first 50 void shards they gave us to start the account, and I pulled Krisk, and I was like, I was able to get to gold 4 in like 3 days, and I won that competition because Krisk just was a massive catalyst to my account, and the other people weren't able to kind of keep up with me getting that advantage of having Krisk on an early account. So he is absolutely bonkers for progression, and also is going to scale well in the end game at 91 because he's so good in the Hydra and different situations like that. So yeah, a lot of fun taking a look at Krisk here because he is such an amazing champion, and it would mean a lot if you remember to subscribe on your way out and like the video, as it goes a long way to helping me out here on the channel to keep cranking out content for you. Also, I'll have this this infographic down below if you would like to take a look at that and pull that up on your end and have that for your records, and let me know what you think down below about Krisk, and I always enjoy hearing your thoughts as well. So that'll do it for me on this one. As always, thanks for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.